Okay. Well, hi everyone. Welcome to this third webinar on the ACE project. We will wait for a couple of minutes to everyone to enter the room, and then we will start with the webinar already. Okay. Thank you for coming. If you have any trouble hearing us or anything, just you can put it on the Q&A option at the bottom of your screen, and we will try to solve it. Okay. Well, it's 12:02, so I think it's time for us to begin. Again, hi everyone, and welcome to this webinar on the ACE project. My name is Josu Naveda from the Basque Energy Cooperative Goyener, and I will be the one introducing the speakers today. We have already held two webinars before where we have talked about existing and successful community energy financing tools or mechanisms, but also about the tools that we have developed here in the ACE project for anyone willing to set up such a financing scheme in their own community, region, country, or whatever. But today we'll hear from the experiences of some of the participants in the project that are trying to create different financing schemes at their country. And I would say that they are dealing with totally different environments. Each one of these schemes or have their own particularities, and they have to deal with their own difficulties on their way to becoming a successful tool for energy communities. After the speakers are done, there will be time for a 15 or 20 minutes Q&A. So please feel free to use the Q&A option at the bottom of your screen. Whenever you want, I will read the questions after the speakers are done. If you have any trouble again with hearing us or whatever, just put it as well in the Q&A, and we'll try to solve it as soon as possible. I will share my screen for a moment because I want to give you some insight on the project for those of you that haven't heard of us before. Okay, so there you go. The basics of this project, again, for those of you who haven't heard of it, ACE stands for Access to Capital for Community Energy, and the main goal of the project is to create community energy financing schemes, which are specific financing tools or mechanisms for community energy projects. This is the projects that are developed by energy communities mostly. The participants in the project are all of us. We are, I think, energy cooperatives or energy cooperative federations from across the EU. And we have been given the task of creating this first, well, not the first one, but replicating at least the successful community energy financing schemes that we can find in Europe, either in France or in the Netherlands or even in the UK. So yeah, precisely today we will hear from people involved in the project, involved in creating these financing tools. Firstly, we will hear from Karel Derbo. Sorry, Karel, if I don't say your surname correctly. I'm Spanish, and the surname is kind of Frenchish, I would say. And yeah, I struggle with that a little bit. But Karel will talk about one of the oldest and biggest citizen energy cooperatives in Europe, which is EcoPower in Belgium. And their ambition right now is to create a financing scheme dedicated specifically to district heating in the Flanders region. Then following Karel's presentation, we will hear from Goran Čačić from SES, which is the Croatian Green Energy Cooperative. And Goran, I think he will tell us about the struggles of setting up a SEVs in a less developed environment towards community energy if we compare it to Belgium, at least, which is one of the most established community energy environments in Europe, probably. And finally, Mark Lantley, from a board member of Midsize and a board member of Energy for All in the UK, who will tell us about Midsize, which is a financing scheme aiming to raise money from energy cooperatives across Europe in order to invest it in community energy projects in those other countries that have somehow shortage of funds for doing so. Yeah, having said that, let's hear from our first speaker, Karel. The floor is yours whenever you want. I think I have to stop sharing.
Yes, thank you, Yasto. I'm going to share my screen. This should be working now. Normally, everybody should see some pictures now. As Yasto already mentioned, EcoPower is a cooperative, energy cooperative from citizens from Flanders that exists already quite some time. It was established in 1991. But the first investments were realized in 10 years later, 2001, by building 2 wind turbines. At that time, they were about the largest in Belgium. Quite strange when I mention it now that this happened, especially because at that moment there were 44 or 45 cooperative members, citizens, member of the cooperative. Now EcoPower is well established, let's say, as a cooperative. It's still fully owned by citizens, so there are no big companies or big shareholders involved. It's all citizens, um, and EcoPower, let's say, has been at the basis of the RESCOPE model. EcoPower was also the founding member of the European Federation RESCOPE EU. The federation provides a platform for RESCOPes all over Europe to get to know each other, to exchange ideas and experiences, to talk, to know that you exist and what you all do. And of course, this is possible that RESCOPE EU as a European federation can do this thanks to a lot of funding from European projects. But we think we doing this, we use the money quite well to make sure that European citizens are already, but can even become a better actor in the European energy transition. In addition to that, RESCOPE EU is kind of structuring the advocacy in favor of this RESCOPE model towards primarily EU institutions and decision makers, and of course also as a spin-off that to national governments. And I can really say that in the meantime, RESCOPE EU, the European Federation, it has many members, RESCOPes all over Europe. It has become recognized as the single voice of RESCOPes among decision makers of all kinds in Europe. Okay, you saw the pictures. This is just things from the field. EcoPower is building wind turbines, developing wind turbines, PV. We also even have a small hydro plant. Flanders, it's Le Plat Pays. You don't have much differences of height, but we still have this at the basis. The start of EcoPower was at this water mill. And of course now solar PV is moving ahead quite quickly. I mentioned already that EcoPower started for the very few citizens members here in 2001. You don't see it here, 45. And this picture is from the end of 23. Over 17,000 members, individual citizens who are member. I think by the end of 24, we end up close to 73 or 34,000 members, which is quite a lot, I would say. I'm surprised myself now. I see the numbers, and of course the equity the money people put in Ecopower, buying shares. One share is 250 euros. It sums up, and the equity at the end of 23 was over 60 million euros. And now it will be, of course, a bit more because members, a few million more, because a few thousand members have joined the cooperative in 1 year. And what is special is that Ecopower is one company, just one legal entity, and everything is in that legal entity, in that one box. So all assets, all projects, wherever they are in the same company. Jostu, I just want to be sure that my slides are moving well.
Yeah. It's
Now you
perfectly
see the
fine.
picture with the it's all in Dutch. Sorry for that. Electricity production. Okay, as I'm sure that it works. So all together, those assets that are developed and built and operated by Ecopower as a, let's say, community energy actor, exemplary. It's fully owned by citizens. They over 100 million kilowatt hours per year is produced from all those assets. And Ecopower has also become supplier in Flanders as soon as the market was liberalized due to European legislation. I think it was in 2003 in Flanders. We, as a test, became supplier because the members said, "Oh, now it should be possible that we get electricity from our own installations at home, our own electricity at home, supplied at home." So that's what we want. That's what we did. And you see the numbers for the moment about 57,000 clients at the end of 23, sorry. This is less than cooperative members because remember, members are people, clients are often families. So people living in one house, just one connection, one client, but you have father, mother, children. You might have several members living in that and having just one supply contract. And what is really stunning even for me to see that at the end of 23, about 1/5 of the total electricity that was supplied comes from the roof of those members. So for the PV installations on their roofs. So what is in excess, but they don't use themselves, they inject in the grid, and Ecopower as supplier buys this and supplies it to the others. So that's quite amazing that apart from the assets that were developed by Ecopower as a cooperative company and wind and PV all over the country or all over Flanders, we have 1/5 of the, even more, of the 110 million kilowatt hours comes from the roof of those members. So it's really, truly a community energy that we have here with many thousands of people that produce electricity themselves to consume it at home. What they have in excess, it goes on the grid, and this goes together with all the installations that are owned by those people, is supplied to everybody at every moment, every 15 minutes moment, as it is in Belgium. So just to say that it really is a community energy actor, which is an example, can be an example for, if you want to give an example of a community energy. This picture just shows the geographical situation of our assets. The members are not mentioned here because then we would have a lot of dots, of course. It's only the installations. You see a few in Wallonie. That's as a result of early collaborations between Ecopower and starting cooperatives in the Walloon area. And in fact, this is the right moment to mention that we continued working together among cooperatives to an extent that very recently there was an initiative that was creation of C-Coop. C-Coop is a company, a cooperative company established in Belgium, and the members are not citizens, but the members are cooperatives or those rescopes that have followed more or less the example of EcoPower in Flanders and in Wallonie. Altogether, I think it's 34 cooperatives. They created together a new company, C Corp, with the purpose to be able to participate in the offshore wind development, which, of course, in terms of financial resources, this is 3 levels too high even for EcoPower. But by joining forces in a company all together, this becomes feasible financially, also because you pool expertise, you pool workforce, and very importantly, you get more credibility from the government. Because now a C Corp can say, we really represent the Belgian citizen. And as Belgian citizen, we want to invest in the North Sea with offshore wind, and we want to be owner of the output of our investment, because then we decide at what price we supply this electricity to our members, and it's out of the hands of any political decisions or any corporate company decisions. It's really the people who decide themselves what happens with their electricity, with their energy. And in the same context, I'm quite happy to announce that already in an early stage, we have been thinking RESCOPs among Europe to do something similar on a European level. And this was also a new company, was created already in 2018. It's called MiSize. It's a European cooperative society, and the members are well-established cooperatives like EcoPower, handful. And I'm quite happy to say that last October, we managed to get this vehicle going with the first investment, in fact, a refinancing of an existing PV installation in Spain, in the UK. Spain will follow, but Mark Lenty will tell more about this later on. So I go to the next slide, because we're not talking about EcoPower here, we're talking about CEFs, the Community Energy Financing Schemes. Now, your first question will be, EcoPower is well established. Why do we need all this? We develop wind, PV, so by our own, based on the returns from the existing assets, the operational assets. So why do we need this? Well, EcoPower is not alone, as I mentioned. More and more, we see we have to bundle forces, and we have been assessing the RESCOPs in Flanders, what are their needs, and then we find out that for most of them, it is development phase, because you never know, will it work? How long will it take? Especially for wind, this can take at least 5 years, but even 10 or more years, and you're never sure if you make it, and you have to pay the cost, people and studies and whatever, to develop a new project. And it doesn't work for those long periods that you go on collecting money from citizens as shares and use that money to develop when nothing is coming out within a few years. So it works that RESCOPs can develop their own PV projects, because that's pretty quick, a few years. So then collecting equity from citizens that pays development cost. Development cost is also quite low compared to a wind project. So for the PV project, it works. But in general, the development phases need external financing. And even for EcoPower, we have been looking into district heating in not only providing green electricity, but also providing green heat. This is a real challenge all over Europe. It's very difficult or impossible to get rid of fossil fuel for heating. We're looking into projects already for many years. That first thing started in 2016. It's almost 10 years ago, with a district heating network based on heat from a municipal waste incinerator in Eeklo. And although we did a lot of efforts, the project has not started yet. But this takes resources. We're trying to develop a project, takes a lot of resources. EcoPower can has resources from its own assets, from the profits from the own assets already operational, but not enough to really force and go forward quickly in this new field, this district heating, which is completely different from what we know, wind and PV. And we really want to go in this area because if you see the climate effects, the effects on reduction of CO2, when you really realize to get building heating off fossil fuel, the effect is huge. So we really want to do something there. And we are quite convinced now that within an existing built environment, so where you have city centers of municipalities with existing buildings, the way forward to go quickly, I say within 10 years to see a difference, a significant difference, you really need to go to district heating, where you, for one day or another, you pass a building with your district heating network, you connect, and the day after, the boiler using fossil fuel is not needed anymore. And that's only possible with district heating. Uh, and then we saw through this, thanks to this project, AXE, that in the Netherlands, Energie Samen, which is like the federation of the energy cooperatives in Holland, they, with success, have kind of set up development funds where they really are able to provide money to cooperatives to develop things themselves. And this was firstly on wind and PV. And now they did this also with district heating. And they replicated it and started it up. It really became operational last year. So I already mentioned part of these things, that there are also in Flanders very ambitious climate goals. But it's very difficult when we would be able to shift away from fossil fuels and for heating buildings. This would have a huge effect. We would reach our goals, but almost all buildings in Flanders, Flanders is an area which is densely populated, and the centers many people live. Everything is working on natural gas. Astonishingly, a lot of heating oil still also. But to really have a significant impact to get away from this fossil fuel for heating the buildings within a short period, I would say 10 years, which is short in the renewable energy or in sustainable energy sector. This is feasible when we have a really large-scale deployment of district heating. And of course, we need the sustainable heat to put in the district heating. But what comes first is the district heating network. For the moment, this is really impossible, for the simple reason that natural gas is extremely cheap. Even when you would have a district heating network existing now, the heat from it would cost the double to the consumers than taking heat from using natural gas, even the triple. But this is going to change, that's for sure. There is European legislation that will tax CO2 emissions and so on. But for the simple fact that it is not now, this legislation is not in force now, any development is blocked. So we are looking into solutions that would allow us to start the development now, to be ready with existing or with built district heating networks ready to operate at the moment that legislation is in place and gas heating is taxed. So that we come at comparable price levels of heat from the district heating. Now, in Flanders, we have quite some expertise among RESCOPs in district heating. We have not Ecopower, but others, Bouvon, not to name, with an operational network, quite big one in the city of Ostend. And also others are trying all kinds of things. Some projects are already in the building phase. So there is expertise and know available at all levels, at all phases of a project. We managed through, thanks to ACE, to organize this expertise to get it more to come to a more structural collaboration through the Flemish Federation of Rescopes, Rescope Flandre. And the reason why we say, listen, we need support as cooperatives, as community energy actors for this, because thanks to this model, this cooperative model you have, it's very much more plausible that your project is successful and profitable. And profitability is very much connected to the degree of connection. Just, it's very simple. Imagine you have a lot of money, you spend a lot of money to put pipes in the earth on the street. And on that street, from the 1,000 houses, only 10 that connect. So you will understand this is never really profitable. You need not 10 from 1,000, but you need 900 from 1,000 to connect. And this connection degree is crucial, but people don't trust it. That's normal. The markets have been liberalized, so you're free to choose your supplier also for gas. So if you're not content, you go and you choose another supplier. But when you sign to connect to a district heating network, you sign to stay connected for another 25 years. So you give up your freedom of supplier. And with really see examples from Holland also that when you have a cooperative developer, cooperative or community energy ownership from a district heating network, the building owners are much more ready to sign a connection agreement for many years, because they know we have control and we will not be ripped off after some years, and the price will stay what they, and we have control on the price also. So the way to do that is we thought about organizational structures where all the stakeholders in the district heating network, stakeholders are those who provide the heat, those who provide the network and operate it, those who take the heat, consume the heat, they're all involved in the structure, and they all have the same business plan. If there's a win, everybody wins. If there's a loss, everybody loses. Okay, so the summary is that for now, we need to get forward and get started now with development. We need external financing. We cannot do it based on the financing we have from our assets already realized. It's too low. It's not much. It's not enough. The Dutch Development Fund approach really shows us it is successful. We make it easy for Flemish governmental actors also to say yes, because they say, oh, this works at the other side of the border in the north of Flanders, so why shouldn't we do the same? And that's why we really want to focus on the replication of that approach from Holland. I just end my speech to give you an overview of not to say empty words. Rescopes in Flanders are doing something in district heating. This is an overview that we made in this working group. Everybody then really showed what they were saying, what they are doing, and then we found out really there's a lot of things going on. Some of these projects are already operational for years. Others are very close or are in the realization phase. Otherwise, are close to, let's say, final decision to go for it. So there is really tangible things, or tangible proofs that Rescope's energy communities in Flanders really can do something to get district heating launched, and by that open the way to get less dependent on fossil fuels and really meet our target goals in Flanders. Okay, that's it.
Okay,
I stop
Karen.
sharing.
Yeah, thank you. Well, thank you very much, Karel, for your insights on your plans actually in this SEVs on district heating. We have received a question already in the Q&A. Again, I will read them out loud after all speakers are done. I remember a reminder to the rest of the audience that they can use the Q&A option at the bottom of the screen to send their questions. Okay, so I think what we've heard is quite inspiring somehow, because we've heard of one of the most successful cooperatives energy community movement in Europe. So let's jump right now to another kind of environment in Croatia. So following Carlos' presentation, Goran Čačić again will tell us about how well they are trying to implement these new steps in Croatia, and what kind of barriers they are encountering in their way. Okay, Goran, whenever you want.
Yes, thank you, Yosu. I won't have a presentation, unfortunately, because we are getting from a quite developed environment for the energy cooperatives. Many years, the cooperatives are working in Belgium and producing their own power and owning own production facilities. In Croatia is quite the opposite. Still, we have the biggest energy supplier in Croatia, who has more than 80% of the energy supply market share and majority of the energy production. The renewables are getting bigger, but it's not ideal. So we have some legislative frameworks which are not ideal for renewables in general, and then we do come as a niche, the community energy, so the inclusion of the citizen into direct ownership in Croatia, which is even harder to achieve. But we won't give up. We want to try to get to the positive examples of people joining together, investing in projects of renewable energy production, with the final goal to either use this electricity by themselves or participate in the energy market, and thus keep parts of the income of the profit in the hands of the people. So Croatia is not the ideal environment. We still have quite low electricity price on the market, which makes it hard to motivate people to join energy communities. Hence, we do not have a lot of initiatives of energy community energy which are starting from the ground up, meaning that if we would have such a good community energy financing schemes, we probably would not have enough of communities that have the projects ready to be financed. So we need to work on the previous steps, on increasing of the number of initiatives which are starting, increasing the number of people who want to join in energy communities and build their own products. So the CEFs or kind of CEFs that we are developing in Croatia is more focused on this. So what we did in Croatia, we started with the collective procurement process and activities, where we try to gather more individuals, family houses, rooftops, or individual homes, or small and medium enterprises, to join together with us to organize a collective purchase of the equipment and collective purchase of the installment services, so that we can get the better deals on the equipment and cheaper installation services that will end up with individual solar power plants on the roofs of our customers. And in the process, we are presenting the opportunities of energy communities and joining the energy communities as a way of using the excess production of electricity from their facilities. As we know, the sun is shining the most in the period from 12 until 2-3 o'clock afternoon, when majority of the households are actually out of the house working or doing something else. So basically, there is a lot of excess production from their power plants. Currently, luckily for them, we have a net metering scheme in Croatia, which allows them to use this electricity which was produced during the peak hours when they get home in the afternoon. But at the end of this year, it is expected that the net metering scheme will be abandoned. So in our collective procurement efforts, we are presenting them the opportunity to join the energy community, and thus to get a better price for the excess of electricity once the net metering is abandoned. So our goal currently now is to show that the own production of electricity makes sense financially, environmentally, energy-wise, and we want to increase the knowledge of the people about what the energy community is, how they can join, and how they can increase the value of the electricity which is being produced by their own production facilities. We have seen from the presentation of Carol that 1/5 is I've seen of the electricity comes actually from the users, from the members of the cooperative, which have their own production facility on the roof. So this is kind of example that we are showing to our clients. How did we do it? So basically, we have signed the memorandums of understanding with the equipment suppliers, with the installers, and we as a cooperative, we serve as an organizer of the collective procurement activities, which makes it to our clients to easily get the turnkey solution for their power plants. So basically, we cover everything from the design phase to installation phase and the connection to the grid. And in this process, we are even securing, if needed, the financing from the bank if they do not have their own capital, or application to grant schemes which are available in Croatia for individual installments of the PV power plant. Through this approach, we managed to secure a discount on the equipment and kind of a fixed installation cost per individual installation for our clients, basically providing them with a better offer for mid-level or high-level quality of the equipment that is available on the market. In Croatia, we do have an issue with the low-quality equipment, which is flooding the market, and we tend to inform our customers or our clients about, how to understand the quality of inverters, the quality of panels, in order to secure the proper work of their equipment in the period of 25 years as it is expected to last on their roofs. So far, we were quite successful. We had 3 group procurements implemented. In total, it was around 190 participants, and it resulted in 1.6 megawatts of installed capacity of solar power plants on the roofs. And achieved discounts were from 50 to 40% on different elements of the equipment. Our final goal in Croatia is when we increase the motivation and the interest of people to join the energy communities, to help initiatives develop different projects of joint investment in renewable energy, and then to try to develop and apply the proper community energy financing scheme similar to the MISAIs and similar to other active schemes in Western Europe. We hope that in the next 2 to 5 years, we will have much more examples of community energy projects in Croatia. We do have one which is ready to be implemented. Our cooperative, ZEZ Green Energy Cooperative, has founded a new cooperative with the intention of actually investing in solar PV plants of larger size. Large, when I say large, to us, it's 200 kilowatts to 1 megawatt. To suppliers and to big players on the market, this is like small size projects. But we have to start small, and we have to gather the experience and build the trust of the people in these kind of community energy projects. So we have managed to acquire the public roof on the market in one small town for lease on 25 years. We have developed the project. We gathered the money needed for implementation of this project for 127 members of this cooperative. And last year, we started with the project preparation, and we wanted to start with the installation in June last year, 2024. But unfortunately, due to the quite negative experience on the market with the prices of electricity during the peak production, when the electricity is in more and more hours is becoming negative, we kind of halted with our investment because we did not have a secured PPA contract or feed-in tariff contract or any kind of a secured purchase of electricity. So we were planning to participate in the market. And luckily for us, by the end of 2024, we had a tender for feed-in tariff published by the national institutions, and we managed to sign this contract. So in February, if the weather permits, we will start with the installation of our first community-owned solar PV power plant in Croatia, and we will have a positive example that hopefully will spring additional initiatives to prepare the pipeline of the projects and to actually have the users for the community energy financing schemes that we are trying to develop through this project.
Okay, Goran, well, that's great news. Let's keep our fingers crossed for that to happen. As you can see, we have jumped from one side of the coin to the other, right? We've started with a very well-established environment on community energy, and we have jumped to another one that is starting to develop right now, which is exciting but challenging at the same time. Karel has mentioned before the Energy Salmon Development Fund, which is I wanted to highlight that because it's one of the lighthouse examples. Sorry, for this project. There are some existing community energy financing schemes that have been proven to be successful across Europe. One of them is the Development Fund in the Netherlands. There are a couple of other funds in France and also in the UK. And one of the key learnings we had in the early stages of the project when talking to the people involved in these funds were that you had to start small, right? You didn't need to create like a really complex scheme from the beginning, because maybe the environment isn't there and you have to create it. So you have to start small, keep it simple, and start building trust with your environment, start building trust with everybody, even with the public institutions, and then you can keep growing and can establish a much bigger or a more ambitious SEVs that way. So yeah, it's a really interesting contrast right now between the two SEVs. Okay, so let's jump to our last speaker, Mark Landley from both Energy for All and Missiles as well. He will talk about precisely Missiles. Okay, Mark, whenever I see you're already sharing your screen.
Good.
Yeah.
Well, thank you very much. I'm going to talk for about 10 minutes to let people have some questions at the end. I wanted to do 5 things. Talk about why this is important, what's happening in the UK, why we have community energy funding mechanisms, and how Energy for All work, and then talk a little bit about Missiles as well, what we are, what we've achieved so far, what we plan to do next. So I thought I'd start with just one slide. This is a slide from today's news. This is a picture of Los Angeles, one of the richest parts of the world, in a year when climate has hit 1.5 degrees above the pre-industrial level. If we do not make changes we need, these sort of images will become much more common, and much of the world doesn't have the resilience of the developed world like us in Western Europe. And my argument, and I think our argument of all of us, is that an energy transition is therefore incredibly important, but we need citizens at its heart. An energy transition that doesn't have citizens involved is less likely to be effective. And this is a picture of Westmill Solar and Westmill Wind, 2 co-ops. I chair Westmill Wind, and I was a founding director of Westmill Solar. 15-year planning battle to get wind built. And the landowner and his wife, who's the woman in yellow, were there celebrating that we had raised the £15 million to buy the solar farm. I'll come back to that. I said, so that's why it's important and why we think citizens need to be involved. This is a quick snapshot from a couple of years ago of the community energy sector. You'll see that it's not as advanced as in Belgium. We have not had the same sympathetic government that exists in Flanders and in the rest of Belgium. But I thought I'd just show you how funding has worked up until now in the UK. Firstly, the UK is a series of separate countries. So it's quite interesting if you look at how things are funded, and if you look at England and then you look at Scotland. Scotland's got a population 1/10 that of England, but its development is obviously a lot more than 1/10, and that's the signal of a supportive government. And they have a system called CARES, which is equivalent to Energy Salmon's fund, where they actually pre-fund projects, and if they're successful, it's a loan, and if it's unsuccessful, it's a grant. And that's allowed in Scotland a real spread of community energy. And in fact, in England, where there has been less government development, we have got some other ways of funding, and we've had to do it as a community. So some local authorities, municipalities like Oxford City, have worked with community energy in their area. Other places like Edinburgh have offered solar roofs. So there's a co-op in the city, and they have a long-term contract with Edinburgh. And we've also offered inter-loan funding to actually help projects go ahead. But we need community funding mechanisms. So I thought I'd just say a little bit about this. I know to some people this will sound a bit, as you'd say in English, counterintuitive. There isn't actually, in the UK, there isn't a shortage of money. Actually, there's a wall of money hunting for projects. And yet at the same time, it's hard for some communities to access the funding they need to get the project working. And why is that? Well, I've listed them out. Sometimes it's too early. Sometimes it's too small. Sometimes the risk is too high. Or the proposal's not put in a way that the funders will understand it. So they're looking at it and think, well, what's this? Sometimes they're not technical expertise. Some places in the UK, there's a lot of funding for community projects. So Oxford and Brighton, Bristol, got a lot of community-minded people there. But there are other parts of the UK, like North Lincolnshire, where we've just done a project in Energy for All. Really hard. Very few people have any experience of community energy or the funds to invest. And in some cases, as a result, cooperative structures are not familiar, and lenders and sometimes the public. And one of the fundamental problems, why do we need these mechanisms? If you're a commercial developer in the UK, you might well have a package of 10 or 20 projects, and a third of them go ahead on the first application for funding, a third go through on appeal, and a third fail. You just spread the cost of the failure across the other projects. But if you're a community, you've only got one project. So we need these sort of funds to actually help communities. At the same time, in the UK, the other challenge is there's just so much capital around. There's lots of it. It's hungry for a home. If you were a developer, a land developer, and you've got a site with pre-planning permission, people will come in and just offer you funds to take the project off your hand, develop it and run it. So it's very hard for communities to get involved. And some of those are quite ethical, and some of them are less ethical, let me put it like that. And there are other barriers. In the UK, the planning process is slow. The government is very centralized. So unlike in Belgium, unlike in Germany, it's a very centralized government. So they tend to look at national projects. They're very less interested in smaller local projects. And there are some practical things like grid connections are really difficult. So we've got a grid that's running at capacity. And as we move from gas to electricity, the grid is already overloaded. I thought I'd just say a little bit about what Energy for All is, which is a sort of fund. And what we do is, I'll show you a model in a minute, but we've got about 19,000 members of our co-ops. We've raised over £100 million in capital over our years. we've created 35 independent cooperatives. Some of them are member co-ops, something else, another structure called Community Benefit Society, which is a co-op. That's the model. Energy for All works with communities. It creates the co-op, it raises the funds, it develops the project, it helps support the project, and each co-op becomes an owner of Energy for All. And when you pay an annual fee to manage your co-op, part of that management fee goes towards funding the next round of co-ops. And that's the structure that we've got, because there isn't the support from other parts of government. But I wanted to talk a little bit about me size. Here is a picture of all of us in the snow. So there's a younger looking me and a younger looking several other people there, actually. But it's interesting. So Carol's there at the back, as you can see. Being Belgian, he's taller than all the rest of us. But I thought, well, I just talk about what is me size, what are we trying to achieve? It's a European cooperative society. It was established, as you can see, as a result of the Horizon 2020 project, based in Belgium. The founding board are those people there: Curlantaire, Enercop, Energia, Energy for All, EcoPower, and ResCoop itself. And what are we trying to do? We're trying to work across Europe. And up until now, the funds have been very much based in one country. So we're trying to work in different countries. We're trying to work for and with community energy, and to address some of those funding blockages that I talked about earlier, and also to lever other funds in. And it is a place for what I call spare capital, although I think as we've come along, there's not as much spare capital as we thought there was going to be. But the idea is that when co-ops have developed but haven't got their next project ready, that they have some capital that's available that can be spent elsewhere. It's a source of funds and, crucially, expertise, but that it works on cooperative principles. That's really important. So what have we done? And when I say we, basically, I mean Carol. Carol has been leading this. We established a co-op with a board back in 2017, 2018. We had a set of structures and governance which were actually designed as part of the project. And we had a fairly small capital base. Each of the members put in a small sum of €5,000. We've strengthened that. And then we've created, as I'll say in a minute, a series of bank accounts, and we have run our first transaction. One of the things we said was, you need, to make this work, you need a low risk transaction that doesn't need the money. And we thought, well, we'll never find them. And then, for reasons that's too long and complicated to go into, the pension fund who had lent money to Westmill are now merging and no longer make direct investments. And they offered Westmill a generous deal to step out of its loan. And rather than go and get the money from a bank, Westmill Solar, which is really interested in developing co-ops, said, well, if you can raise the funds, we will work with you. So it's a bit of a risk for everybody. But Westmill Solar refinanced a £5 million pension fund loan over 10 years at 6%. It pays 6% and pays its principal back every 6 months. And 5% is paid to the members who are lending the money in. And therefore, obviously, there's 1% left over. And that is helping get Me-Size off the ground. And a lot has been done in a short time. To make this transaction work, we had the shape of the structure there, but actually when you're starting to do it, you realize there's the most enormous amount of work. So to make this loan across countries, you need proper technical due diligence. That was done by a B Corporation lawyer, Bates Wells. We had a series of partners that are listed there. I think just to make the point that we have put together a series of lending agreements now, so they can be used again, and they're done on a proper way. And we have a technical advisor, and we've got KPMG doing work. And that's actually got the loan going. We now have our next steps. And over the next 12 months, we're going to be looking at our organizational structure, getting the processes that make it simpler for us to do the next loan or investment, probably. Have a proper business plan that we can go with risk assessment, with financial reporting. And as we gain new members, we need to think about our board, because our board is the existing people. You can't have a board of 50 co-ops, for example. So you have to think through how you're going to get a board in place. And we need to look out. We need to have proper communications. We need to discuss with new partners, and we need to identify the projects. And we need the right balance of risk and timing and benefits, and not just do something that's commercial. Because if it's just commercial, you think, well, why bother? It has to provide an additional cooperative benefit. And now I'm drifting into what I call personal view, which means I haven't checked it with anybody else. But there are partners with whom we could work. So, for example, as well as the co-ops across Europe, there are also growing across Europe different organizations who are raising funds from citizens. So rather than MISAs raised directly from citizens, there are organizations who are doing very similar things. FX in the UK is an ethical fundraiser, similar to LITA in France, Go Parity in the Iberian Peninsula, Thrive in the UK, and Energy Prospects, which is the Energy for All's in-house sort of project that does this. So what could we be? Where could we be in 2030? This is, again, my view. Others will have views, and one of the things we need to do is work through and have consensus on that. We could have a series of projects across Europe. All the major energy co-ops are a member of MISAs. We have raised funds and made investments, not just loans, more investments. We're working with ethical fundraisers, and we're recognized as an actor with the EU, with the European Investment Bank, and we're credible with financial partners. So I take us back to that start, the challenge, the importance of community, the importance of having an energy transition that is across Europe. And this is one part of that. And I'll stop sharing my screen there because I think that's the last slide. Yeah. And I'm trying to work out where there you go.
Okay, Mark. Well, thank you very much for this great presentation, because I think it's a really interesting scheme or view, because it's more like continental, right? I mean, it's more about the correct allocation of the funds, because we see that some places have a shortage of projects and some other places have this shortage of funds. And this kind of scheme can make that connection even on a continental, on a continental view.
Yes, and it's the first time the sector has ever tried to do something like this. So it's incredibly exciting, innovative, ambitious. It's something that Rescoop, EcoPower, Gabo, and colleagues have done that's really groundbreaking, as you'd say in English.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think one of the best parts of this scheme is that the founders actually understand perfectly the community energy movement and understand perfectly the risks of a project by an energy community, for example, because the founders themselves are energy cooperatives, citizen energy cooperatives. So that's really great. I think what happened to MISAs, what has been like quite a big amount of time without no projects, is that maybe there is this fear sometimes to fail, or and one of the key learnings from this project as well that we learned from our examples in the Netherlands or in France was that sometimes you have to fail in order to learn, or in order to do something at least, right? And there is we actually created this report, which is called the best practice report, at the beginning of the project, that we realized that it was worth looking at the mistakes more than the success factors, the mistakes of these early SEVs to learn the proper way, right? So that's really interesting. This best practice report, by the way, it's available on our website. So please don't. We invite everyone to visit our website. Okay, so we're done with the presentations. I will jump to the Q&A. I remind the audience that there is an available option at the bottom of the screen that you can send your questions. We had a question on Karel's presentation by Francesc López Álvarez. It's about the district heating, Karel. He's asking about what kind of district heating it is. Is it based on waste burning, or what would you think about green hydrogen? Is it considered at the mid or long term?
Yeah, no, it's a good question. We also find out that when you really try to find the heat source from the beginning, that you never come to realizing the project. We see, in fact, the district heating network as a high temperature network. I should specify 65 to 70 degrees temperature that will be provided in order that you can replace any fossil fuel boiler in any building that you want to connect. Where does that heat come from? Well, that's the killer, because there's very few sources of heat at this temperature level nowadays available that you can contract for sure for many years. I gave some examples of the existing networks in Flanders, but also in other countries that, in fact, need municipal waste combustion, where you have this heat at this temperature level available. But then you're just talking about a few plants in every region, and typically waste combustion, you don't do it in your neighborhood where you're living. It's somewhere outside, far away where people live, and then it means a huge upfront investment already to bring the heat to the places where it's needed. So it really makes the projects very difficult to start slowly. You should start really at once with everything. So the short answer is, we are looking now in primarily where is the district heating network on its own profitable, not looking at the source. This means where you have a very high density of the heat demand. And when this is profitable, when you have this favorable situation where you have a very high concentration of heat demand in the city centers, for instance, then you look at possible sources. And what we see now is that, in fact, the large-scale heat pumps, in the megawatt scale, that you connect to the grid like you would connect to wind turbine, that's also our expertise field. Electricity becomes cheaper because you are connecting you save grid cost. You're connecting at a middle tension level or high tension level. There we see a big future of those heat pumps where they use heat from the environment, like big streams, water streams, or big water surfaces, as you have in many places in Europe where you have cities, you have a river. So to extract the heat from that river on the megawatt scale to provide the heat in the district heating. And then you leave the gas heating, the most recent installations in place to be as backup, but not only, also to cover those periods of the year where the heat demand is very high and you don't make it with your sustainable heat source. Apart from that, we also look at biomass, which is quite strange. But there also has been a strong development that you have possibilities of biomass boilers up to the megawatt scale, very close, very, very compact in containers. You can put really in the centers of cities. You can cover it nicely with wood, and it looks like a nice area where you really can start providing, being sure that you have a heat source at the right temperature level, and you use, in fact, the wood rests from the maintenance of the the landscape. Like every city, you have service to take care of the trees and everything, the green animals, elements in the city, and you use those wood chips to provide heat. And that's environmentally possible because also a recent development of the last years, the emissions from this kind of smaller boilers, the 1 megawatt is a small boiler, you have now state-of-the-art fine dust filtering and so on. So you really can respect all the emission restrictions with those wood chip boilers. So those two elements are we see as the main stepping stones for providing the heat in the district heating networks that we want to develop.
Yeah, Mark, you're.
I was only just going to say, if I can just for a second share, we've also been discussing hydrogen, and I mean, you do hear it discussed in the European Union and people talking about hydrogen. This is a, can I find it? Is that it? I'm not going to try and share it. There is actually a hydrogen ladder that you will see, and there are some things where hydrogen is unavoidable. So fertilizer, some sort of products, but hydrogen is probably less viable in things like cars and home heating. So in terms of hydrogen and these sort of things is working out where you will use it. So heat pumps, where you generate 2 or 3 units of heat for every unit of electricity you put in, versus burning things. It seems, you know, my own view is that sort of hydrogen does have a place in the climate transition, but we need to work out and use the right place for what it is.
Yeah, to be clear, I didn't answer on that. We did not even consider hydrogen because for us it's clear it will not be used to generate heat. Hydrogen is used primarily as a feedstock, as building element for chemistry, where it will have the highest added value because it will remain very cheap. And we see already now that with this approach of district heating networks in the really city centers, you don't need it. With the heat pumps, with the wood chip boilers and solar thermal, because in the cities in the summer you don't need. In the summer, you only need heat for district heating for hot water, and then you can do everything with solar thermal.
Yeah.
Anyway, that's too technical.
Yeah.
We are sure that this approach will work technically, and now we need to find financing for the development phase. That's what ACE is focusing on.
Yeah. Okay. We have on the one side one comment by John for Mark and Karel. They are trying to develop a CEFS in the region of Woodstock, North Wensmill, and they are interested in contacting you guys about the scoop and size. So he has you have his contact there, his email in the Q&A section. I will snapshot everything, so don't worry about that. And then there is a question by Andre. Sorry, Andre, I don't know how to spell it. Sorry. For Mark about the barriers for a community PVE. I'm going to read out loud directly, okay? So it's PV projects produce energy in times when electricity price is the lowest and there is a clear trend there. The economic incentive, cut energy bill or invest in project that will generate ROI, is thus diminishing for the members of the community. How do you address this? Are communities okay that electricity price from community PV might actually be higher than commercial price at the same moment?
Goodness. I'm not sure I can probably answer all of that. So the Westmill sells its electricity under a feed-in tariff. So that is less of an issue for Westmill. The projects that we have found viable in the UK since the feed-in tariff has ended have been projects where there is energy demand during the day. So it's picking up your point. and where you can maximize as much consumption on site as possible. And as I said earlier, there are projects, we have projects in Edinburgh where they are council offices and leisure centres, fitness centres, where and schools, where a lot of the energy is used during the day, and you use it straight off the roof rather than it going into the grid. Because in the UK, the electricity price is, unlike Goran was saying earlier, the electricity price is really high. It's one of the highest in Europe. And that's partly because all the costs of transmission, but also environmental subsidies and nuclear subsidies are all added onto the electricity bill. So where we can, we try to come up with projects where there is a lot of self-consumption and it's a south-facing roof and it's quite easy to build, because that's been the way, in the absence of government support, we've been able to build projects. So one of our most recent projects, for example, is a field solar project in Scotland. There is occasionally sunshine in Scotland. It's a 3 megawatt site, and it's a private wire to a college. And the college is using the electricity during the day. And interestingly enough, what we found is schools use a lot of energy during the day and even when they're shut, because increasingly schools are full of computers and servers. And so actually they use more energy than you think they would during the day. We have explored batteries. There's a lot of talk about batteries. Every time we've looked at it, it hasn't been viable. And the people who know more about batteries than me, which is pretty much anybody, would say that you actually need to use the batteries in several different ways to make it viable. So one of which is shifting it, but also in terms of grid services. So I think my observation is, at the moment, it makes sense to address this issue by siting solar where you have a lot of daytime demand directly. And the technology is changing, and I think other things will come on stream, but that's where we've sat at the moment. But I'm looking at Gordon and Cadel in case they have any other better answers.
Yeah, in fact, I have some answer, because this is a real painful thing which happened or is still happening at EcoPower, because we're both producer and supplier. So things are connected. So in our minds, we often say, like, EcoPower producer, developer and producer, you want to have as much as the highest price for the electricity you inject in the grid. And as supplier, you want to have the lowest price, because then you can offer a low price to your customer. But then now we come to the situation that the market prices at that very moment of electricity on the wholesale market, and also the prediction for that price goes down and down and down. This makes that our new developments, projects that you have been working on for more than 10 years, are big wind projects, and you're finally ready to push the button and start, have a financial close and start the project to build, that you come to the conclusion with the actual wholesale market prices and those predicted in the next 25 years, the project is not profitable anymore. So what will you do then? Don't build it? That's the difference with the cooperative. We don't just do it for the money. We want to be owning and controlling our future. So we still build it, but this means that you say the output from that new project will get a value which is actually higher than the market value. And who pays that value? Of course, the EcoPower supplier and the EcoPower members. So they will pay more than the market. If the market will be what it is now, and it is never like that. And we saw in the past that when certainly you have strange things happening, like wars, and the gas price is going crazy, electricity price is also times 5 or times 10, and the normal suppliers, they just charge this extra cost to the customers. While EcoPower is just charging the same price as always, because it's based on earning back the investments done. And then just in one year, the year 2022, an average customer of EcoPower paid on an annual basis or saved about 500 or what was it, 340 euros by staying or being customer at EcoPower or being an average or customer of an average supplier in Belgium, because they all went up. That's just one single year. And then we count on the solidarity of our members. They know us, they know that we are stable and that we go for the long term. And you should not look at the energy price now, but you should look at the energy prices over 25 years. And they're also owner and investor. They have invested also. So when the projects are profitable, there's also a dividend, be it small, but this all comes together, that members still see that even when market prices are going down now, when they invest in a cooperative, they control things, and on average, they don't pay more for the energy than the market. In fact, when you look back over 10 years or 20 years, they pay much less. So this is always the problem, looking at the moment now. What are the situation now? What do you think for the future? And still go on investing and spreading everything over 25 years. But it's a very concrete problem or a question we're struggling with every day, and really you count on the solidarity of your members, because when those 70 or close to 60,000 now clients, when they suddenly would all leave, which they can because it's a legislation, they are free to go. When many of them suddenly go in half a year, we have a problem. So your price must be more or less close to the market. Should be no extremes.
Thank you. Can I just try and answer a little bit John Wynn's comment as well? John asked about a project in Woodstock. So Woodstock is physically, although I'm not in there at the moment, is about 6 kilometers from where I live. I think what I would say is, in terms of MESIs, we're not trying to replace national community energy funds. So I think, and one of the great things about Oxford is there is an Oxford regional group called the Low Carbon Hub. And so my instinct in most of these sort of things is, if there's funding that can be raised locally, raise it locally. If there's stuff that is beyond that needs to be raised nationally, then look at that. And then MESIs is looking where it can't do those sorts of things. So for example, it's in Croatia, where there isn't that same national thing, or where it's so large that it's beyond the capacity of organizations. And without sort of sounding down, I think one of the things we originally said was that we'll start in euro because, you know, there's not a foreign exchange risk. That if it happens, we took Westmill on and we built in some modeling for foreign exchange, but it is a sterling one. So I suspect the next transactions we're going to do are going to be in euro rather than in sterling, because the funds are being raised in euro. So that's probably, I thought it was useful to answer that. So
yeah, thank you, Mark. I agree on that.
Okay, well, thank you both. We have another question by Mara. At ACE, are you researching the potential of the stewardship ownership model? Famous examples like Ecosia, Patagonia, or Carlsberg. We are not. I know. I mean, there was this. I think Prescoop had an agreement with Patagonia, right, Mark? Or yeah, Mark,
at this point.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah, at this point, I'm going to
leave your
reveal.
t-shirt on, please. Yeah. Okay.
Go to.
Okay. Yeah, I think you muted yourself. I don't know how, but
there you go. So I think it's a bit beyond the. I mean, there are examples. So I don't know about Carlsberg. I know Ecosia, where they plant a tree for and they use the browser. In the case of Patagonia, Patagonia has strong ethical underpinnings and has supported something called it supported ResCoop for several years. and help produce some publicity for the community energy movement with a really great video called "We Are the Power." So if you haven't seen it, go through YouTube, Patagonia, "We Are the Power," and you will see examples of some of the best community energy groups across Europe. In fact, I think Gordon was on it somewhere, actually. Were you? Yes, there you go. So I think that's what I'd say there. There are, I mean, what we're trying to do with MeSize is slightly different. And I did use the phrase in my presentation. I mean, there are a lot of ethical organizations out there, and that's great. So there's unethical, and there's co-ops, and there's sort of ethical things in the middle. And I put Patagonia in there along with other organizations. I'm not sure those are the people we'd work with. At the moment, we're trying to reach the cooperative movement. And my instinct is, we will lend to people who are members of our group. So we're not trying to duplicate what other things are doing. We are trying with MeSize to do stuff that's not being done elsewhere. So we're not trying to duplicate Triodos or Patagonia. We're trying to do something different. Carol, have I got that right? Yeah, thank you.
Okay, we don't have any other questions from the audience, but okay, yeah, I think, okay, yeah. We have one from Jens Blake. What are the prerequisites and conditions for joining MeSize? Oh, that's
being a cooperative, being an energy cooperative in the first instance, I suspect. Sharing our values. There is we are developing the process for onboarding new members. So at the moment, there are a series of people, organizations who have supported this first MeSize transaction and who are not members of the original co-op. So the two Westmills, for example, both of whom, one's lent and one's borrowed, Boindy and other co-ops have been part. So I think the first thing we're going to do is bring those co-ops into MeSize. And then what we want to do is look at other organizations, other community energy groups who are interested. So if you're a member of a community energy group and you'd like to be a member of MeSize, we'd like to talk to you, I think. But we can't give any guarantees. I mean, talk to you is the first point.
okay.
Yeah. Maybe in this context, it's worth to mention that it is foreseen in the statutes of MeSize so that non-REST groups can join. And then we really thought about funds, ethical funds, also like local authorities, these municipalities who really want to contribute and have developments ongoing in their territory. They can become a member of MeSize, but they just they have the same voting rights as any other member. So they can also become investor and funder. The funds, of course, they can step in with serious amounts of money when this would be needed for new investments that MeSize would like to go into. I really already can say that the projects we are looking at now are, as Mark said, in the Eurozone to reduce the risks, and also in technologies where we have all the expertise. The members of MeSize, the cooperatives who are member now. And then the size of the projects, really look into the size of 20 or more million euros investment. As Mark mentioned, this is something, a size that becomes difficult for the individual REST scopes. And by joining forces in MeSize, it becomes, you spread risk to start with, and you bundle expertise and financing power, so then it becomes feasible. Just to add on what Mark was saying.
Okay, well, we don't have any more questions. I have one of my own, which I want to connect maybe 3 presentations here, at least 2 of them, because we've seen how a good community energy environment is vital for any kind of financing scheme, a specific financing scheme to be successful. So, Karel, you've been there like 25 years ago. What would you say to Croatia, to Goran, to any other countries that lack this environment in the beginning? How do you keep on? How do you push your cooperative to keep going and face the barriers you encounter?
Yeah, the only thing I can say now is if you want to leave, it's not a good moment. You should hold on now, because right now the community of cooperatives, the rest in Europe, are putting in place all what is needed to do the next step. Like the example of C Corp, the MISAIs, we in this Axi project, we find all the ways that we can get better to finance ourselves, and this is the key to get forward. Yeah, we should do the same or better than the private developers or whatever, or join with them, like in C Corp, join in with them in consortia. So, and this is happening now, and in fact it goes much faster than I expected. Although getting MISA started, it took quite some time, and there's an explanation for that. But now it's all happening. I expect in the next 5 years, really there will be a boost in activities of RESCOPs, cooperative ownership by citizens led in all over Europe, because right now we are able to invest in a wind farm in Croatia. Or to acquire part of existing wind farm. That's possible now. We have the structure, we have the people with the know-how to quickly look into those files and decide what could we offer, how much, what are the legal and financial conditions. So this is right now, and I expect within 3 years we have concrete results of that. So when you're a small cooperative and struggling with your local situation, like in Croatia, even not small anymore, but struggling with the local situation, this might change very quickly when suddenly you acquire part of a big project, or you build a PV plant of 5 megawatt peak, and your cooperative is part of the game, because as a local partner you are in the driving seat. MISAs can't do anything without a strong and competent local RESCOP who knows exactly what the local conditions are and who can do all the work on site, boots on the ground. So that's my answer.
Yeah, and to add on this, why are we doing this in Croatia? And my personal vision of what I hope will happen in future, we are on the brink of change of the energy system. So it's a substantial change of the current energy system. We have been taught for tens of years that the energy can only be produced and is only produced by the big players on the centralized way, and it is distributed to us as a user, and that we cannot participate and must not participate in this process because it will ruin the entire energy system. This is wrong and this is changing, but it's a slow change because it is a change of society, it is a change of the approach, and it is change of the mentality of the people. We touched upon the price of the electricity. Energy cooperative and energy community cannot guarantee that the price of electricity which you will be buying from it will be lower than the market. But I see it as it's a purchase of the product which is, let's call it, eco-friendly. So even now on the market, if you're purchasing, fruits and vegetables, you can buy really cheap, good-looking vegetables in a market. But if you want to buy a really local food, but you are sure that they have been produced in an ecological way, that it did not harm your environment, it costs more than the available vegetable in the market on the shelves. So this is, as I see it, with the energy. Our energy in some cases will be more expensive than on the market, but as it has been said, we are counting on our members to be solidar with us and to, in some cases, pay even higher rates for the electricity, for the energy they are using, with thinking in mind, this is my energy, I'm producing it in a sustainable way without doing harm to the people and the environment, and it will increase my security if something happens on the market, which could increase and probably will increase the electricity prices. So this is what we are hoping for, but we have to change the mentality. We have to increase the trust of the people in community and cooperative approaches, which is in the Balkan area is quite hard because of the historical poor and bad experience with cooperative approaches previously, but we can go over this obstacle as well. Yeah.
I very quickly, I would say the sort of projects I've been involved with, the people have a combination of ethical values, professionalism, and stubbornness to not be deflected. And I've said it on other occasions. Usually we're starting, even the project at EcoPower started around a living room table, a kitchen table, people talking. And so my one piece of advice is take photos of when you're doing that, because in 20 years' time, everybody's going to say, well, how did you ever start? You want a picture of that living room table with all of you sitting there. And that is what we're trying to achieve with Rescue and with MeSites, is actually so many people who share those same values, who share those same problems, sharing those expertise. So Gordon is in exactly the same position as Gavin was, and in exactly the same position as the founders of Energy for All in Baywind were.
Okay, so thank you very much for the questions, for the answers, of course. We've run out of time already. It's 1:30. Some countries already have lunch at 1:30, so we will wrap up. We will end the webinar here. I want to share my screen for a moment so everyone can, well, we will share the slides afterwards, but you can see here the webpage for the project. There is this link also for the resources part. So feel free to enter the website. Feel free to ask us anything via our website or even by email. And well, thank you all. Thank you to our 3 wonderful speakers. And see you next time. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Are we staying on just for a minute, just to